Sometimes you just need to turn off the distractions, get to work, and find the universal truths that affect us all and that govern our universe. This is a good place to do that. Mark Foltz and Kat Hobson will try to help with that a bit by bringing fantastic guests. Let's see what's happening tonight.
Welcome to Universal Truth in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm coming to you personally from my cute little tiny home near Pensacola, Florida. And hopefully tonight you're going to, which are spiritualist devices, Ouija boards, spirit boards. I have pro and con stories for all of it. And I've been in metaphysics for 42 years, so I have a little bit of experience with this. I've had some very interesting, accurate stuff happen with them that it changes your mind. When you start off, you go, yeah, and then you use it. You use these devices, and then you go, oh, it's happening. So before we get going, I want to say, of course, anyone who wants to meet me in person, I work at Living That Lives Metaphysical Store in Pensacola on 4622 Softly Field Road. I'm usually there Fridays and all day Saturdays, and every third Saturday, like this one coming up, we have a psychic affair, so I'll be there all day. And if you're coming in town and you wanted to meet me and I'm not there at the store, you can call the store, call about 24 hours ahead of time and make sure I'm going to be there. And if I'm not there, I'll see if I can get there for you. And I'm one of 3 readers there. There's Tony Talley and Terry O'Connor and myself. We're all 60-year-old. We all have the same kind of age group thing going on. We all bring different experiences. And Sal Gandolfo and Matthew Ferguson are practitioners in the metaphysics. And so, which all of us pretty much are. I am. So they're practitioners. I'm practitioner. We know how to help you if you have problems like haunted housing, things like that. They have all the merchandise there to do all this stuff. But I deal with people all the time dealing with how to cleanse your home properly, and I'm going to do a show about that. And I'll tell you how to. Well, I may actually even throw that in this show. I might to because because if you have a problem like using a Ouija board or something, or where you've had something come in, because we're in the time of year. Actually, the time that the sort of thinnest is from May 1st to November 1st. And in the summer, you get more ghost activity as they're made out of an electromagnetic plasma, because that's what we have. Our electromagnetic plasma forms with electromagnetic fields. That's what our aura is. And so in the warm weather, the spirits, which are made of that electromagnetic plasma, it's like Jello. Jello, when it's warm, Jello melts and becomes fluid, and it has motion. When it's congealed, when it gets cold, it thickens up. And that's the same thing with spirits. So up until November 1st is when you really get a lot of spirit activity. And then some of them can function during the cold weather because if you have central heating or things like that, they can stay warm and they can stay fluid. But a lot of times, in the cemeteries too, around this time is when you start to see the spirits, the little puffs of light will come out of the graves that are there. Not everybody's in their graves, but there are always some who hang around, and you'll see them come out like little puffs of phosphorescent greenish light or fog, and they'll absorb the last of the heat before it starts to get cold. So I usually see ghosts and stuff a lot easier in May around Beltane. When I lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee, there's a place near it on the border of Chattanooga, Tennessee and Georgia. There's the Chickamauga battlefield. And I had to go through there all the time, and I had to move one time on Beltane. And I got to see, some of the stuff it had to offer, lights in the trees that would fall down. I saw what the Indians would call aniwa, which we would call, really looked like what you think Bigfoot would look like. And it was just walking on its way, following a ley line, and a big, tall, shambling, hairy thing, So the summer months you see more, and then they get active before they have to kind of hibernate for the winter, and then some of them go further than that. And when you go to cemeteries and things like that, you need to always kind of clean your energy. When you use communication devices like Ouija boards or spirit boards, you always need to make sure you're doing it right and you're closing it down after you've opened it. And sometimes, some people don't close the doors, and really the Ouija board itself is a door, and they're come knocking because you called them. And if you call them but you don't send them back, or you don't close the entryway, sometimes you'll get those in your home. So that we're going to talk about that. But before I finish tonight, I will give a little thing. If you have a problem and you're having a problem in your house and you need to cleanse it, I'll tell you the right way to do it, because a lot of people will grab smudge and think that's all you need, and they'll smudge their house, and it will overwhelm the spirit with the smell, and the spirit will leave, but it'll come back later because you didn't draw a boundary with water and salt or Florida water, which here I had heard of Florida water all my life. I'd never seen it until I moved here, and it's great for cleansings and resetting the energy in your home and making a barrier. So we'll cover that because this is the season, and a lot of people do a lot of things to be scary, and they scare themselves, and sometimes accidentally we open ways for things to wander in or to piggyback off of us, coming from cemeteries or haunted houses or things like that. So I'll give you, before the end of this show, I'll give you a way to cleanse your home that, it puts the power in your hands so you're not helpless or hopeless, because I know people sometimes get terrified. And especially if there's children involved or anything like that, always, let me know. And then, I'll tell you what to do or how to do it. And I can remote view and pop in and look at everything because I do that. I actually have cases where I can prove, I was able to pop into people's houses and look around and make sure the stuff is gone. And just because I can tell you what's in your house, where it is, where to look for it. So, but we'll tackle that at a little later in this show. We're going to start talking about Ouija boards. The beginning part, we'll talk Ouija boards, because the second part, I'll talk spirit boards, because they're a little different. And, hopefully I'll be able to make it clear. But of course, I was raised in the 60s, so we had dark shadows and things like that. And, dark shadows would have seances almost weekly for sometimes, sometimes they would just have these incredible seances and they'd go back into the past or they would talk to these spirits and stuff like that. So I was 4 years old when that started, and I was a fan at 4 because I remember watching when Barnabas Collins came into the scene. So, and it went on until 71, I think, and I was like in second grade. So from the age of 4 until it ended, I watched it religiously. And so I saw and was exposed to, people talking to ghosts, people talking to spirits. And also, my grandmother was psychic and she would tell you stories and she could see ghosts. I could see ghosts. My mother had premonitions. She didn't really see ghosts. She saw a few things, but I always had a fascination with it. And then in the 70s, there was this great movie called The Changeling with George C. Scott. Terrifying. One of the most terrifying ghost movies. It was the first one made, really, where, now they use the things so much, like balls bouncing down the stairs, the house is exploding. But that was really the first one that I remember. I would say it started the trend for a lot of horror shows now, but it's a very effective, frightening ghost story. Very frightening. That house, I would love to be in that house, but boy, you would feel like the minnow in the belly of the whale. And the story was great, and the atmosphere was great. So, but in that movie, they had a psychic come in who did automatic writing. And this was in the 70s, I guess, I was probably, 14, 15 when I saw this. And immediately the spiritualist genes I have were like, ooh, I want to do that. I want to do that. So when I was practicing as being trained as a metaphysical person, I got a third degree program at the time. And, part of that was we're using tools. One of the tools was automatic writing. One of the tools was the Ouija board. And we've always had movies that have things about Ouija boards, like 13 Ghosts, the ones from the really old one. They have a Ouija board, they're using it, and the planchette gets up and floats across the room and lands on the girl's lap. to tell her, you're next kind of thing. So people have always used the boards as a way to scare people in a way. But it really is a spiritualist designed, well, it's one that spiritualism could use to communicate with dead people. You really don't need the board. You can just do it, But when they came up with the board, then it put that tool in the hands of millions of people to give them a metaphysical experience. But they keep pushing it as a toy. And I know that Toys R Us, I don't know if I think they're all extinct. But you'd have to go to Toys R Us to get a Ouija board. And actually, I saw one that really disturbed me, which was a little pink one for little girls. And I'm like, oh, no. I don't think you should touch a Ouija board until you're of age. If you're able to drive a car, drink a beer, you can do a Ouija board. But I don't think children should use Ouija boards. And I think, I remember people getting Ouija boards for Christmas gifts when they were very popular because they go through cycles. And in the 60s and 70s, because of, Dark Shadows and other movies, they became popular. They really were made, in the early 1900s. And before that, they had wonderful, wonderful little automatic writing boards. They would be these little planchettes with a hole in them to put a pencil, and they had little wheels on them. And you would put your hands on the planchette without being able to see the paper, and you would write. You would do your automatic writing, which is letting the subconscious rule the physical. You let the subconscious flow, and the physical part of the writing gets your body focused on that, so the rest of it can flow. And so they had quite a few devices that were really amazing, but the Ouija board is the one that has captured the American and worldwide attention. And now they have movies, endless movies about Ouija, evil, Ouija. So, but it's really not evil in itself or good or bad in itself. It's a tool. And if you take it out of the box and use it with no preparation, then you're just going to get whatever you get. And I always suggest if you get one, you cleanse it, you do a little bit of energy work on it before you even say hello. And then use it, but do it, realistically, do the hello, do your communication, then finish and say goodbye. And a lot of times people use them and don't think about it, or they get scared and they forget to close it. They just throw it in a closet. I worked at a metaphysical store in Chattanooga back in the 90s. And this little girl used to come in. She was so cute, very sweet. And she came in one day just looking terrified and fried. And I could see this dead guy in a leather jacket following her. And I said, "Where'd you get your dead boyfriend?" And she said, "Well, me and my friend were using a Ouija board, and we got scared, and we threw it in a closet and ran off." Well, this guy had been following her for 3 days. So I said, "Where's the board?" It was in her trunk. And she brought it in. I reset it. I closed it. Closed the communication of the spirit that was following her. And then then she was fine. We got rid of him. Next time I saw her, she was in great form. So We are going to have to go to a break. So when we come back, we're going to talk about Patience Worth, the most famous example of a spirit coming through a board. And so all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Warning, the following message does not necessarily reflect the views of WBHM-DB or its hosts, guests, listeners, or of any functioning adult in general. In fact, Frank should probably seek professional help. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi there, Frank Lee here. I thought that I would spend a few moments telling you about the positivity from the network here. The overall message of para-unity and happiness, and how everyone here wants to get along with everyone out there, and how everything is just wonderful. Wait, Cat's not looking. Okay, I've got something to really tell you. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what's really going on. Honestly, all that being nice and positive crap was kind of hurting my soul, as dark as it is. So, what's really happening? You see it all the time. Everybody and their brother out there has a paranormal team because they watched a couple of episodes of Ghost Hunters or some crap like that. So they go and they spend half their mortgage payment on tools and things that light up that they don't understand. And then the next logical step, after buying matching black t-shirts and posing like 90s rappers for their Facebook page, is to, of course, have their own podcast. Well, you know what? You're not going to find that crap here. What we have here at WBHM Digital Broadcasting is the best host, the best guest, bringing you real information. All of the hosts here on this network know their stuff. They are the people who have been out there doing the work, doing actual research. And no, by research, I don't mean binge watching some kind of cheesy TV show on Netflix. I mean reading books. I mean out in the field doing the legwork. And who are they interviewing on their shows? They're bringing you the people they have learned from. They're bringing you the best in the field, covering all kinds of topics, from UFOs and aliens to Bigfoot to cryptozoology to ghosts to anything you can think of, a bit strange and unexplained. It is here, and you're going to get the best information here. So stay tuned to WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Don't go anywhere. Speaking of going somewhere, I've got to go before my mic gets cut. We'll see you there on WBHM-DB.
Welcome back to Universal Truths. This is Mark Fultz coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. And I am talking to you from my beautiful tiny little house near Pensacola, Florida. Now, we are talking about Ouija boards and spirit boards, and I have pros and cons for both. And, of course, you know, like I said, I'm not sure. I guess Toys R Us are extinct by now, but they used to carry them. And actually, you could get, like I said, get one. It's probably going to be a rarity, but a pink Ouija board with a pink light-up planchette. But that really shocked me when I heard that, because I thought children should not be using these. These are not a toy. They really need to be in special order kind of things. But that's because it's people who don't respect what these things, what these tools are capable of being, or opening the door to. So now, back in the 1800s, spiritualism became very popular through the Fox sisters in the 1840s. And by the late 1800s, there was just a huge following. Spiritualism became a huge religion for a while. And it gave people, it really was a woman's kind of thing, a woman empowerment. Women could make their own money doing seances and talking to the dead and doing tarot. And so it was a big deal. So any device that could help that, people were all over it. And when Ouija boards came out, it became available to everyone, not just spiritualists, but to everyone. And not everyone needed to touch a Ouija board. And I was just talking to Kat Hobson saying, there was somebody, I've known people who have gone to cemeteries and gone to haunted places. They didn't spiritually cleanse the boards or anything. They just use the board cold and say, is there anything out there that wants to talk to me? And I will tell you right now, there's plenty of anythings that want to talk to you. Plenty of dead things and not dead things and strange things. He wasn't being specific on somebody, And then, I've known a lot of people who've done things like that and then have problems. Because really what it is, it's like taking the front door off its hinges and saying, hey, to whoever's out there on the foggy street, come into my house. So if you do it and do the rules and say hello, talk to them, then go goodbye, usually no one has a problem. You may get some communication, you may get garbled stuff, but a lot of people get heavy communicative things. And as I will tell you here in a moment, because I'll tell you one of my favorite stories. It turned out okay, but in the 70s, there was two little girls. I've told this before on one of my other shows, I think. There were two little girls that were using a Ouija board, and one wanted to contact Marilyn Monroe, one wanted to contact Jean Harlow, and they wanted to become those women. They wanted them to come from the board and come into them, and to make them beautiful and talented and famous. So the little girl who was going to do Jean Harlow, she got it. You have to watch what you say on a Ouija board, because your words have power, and you have to watch out how you say it, because it's very literal sometimes. And this little girl talking to Jean Harlow says, I want to be like Jean Harlow. What she meant to say is, I want to be beautiful, famous, rich, known like Jean Harlow. I want her to come into me and make me beautiful. And what happened is the girl got possessed with something, and she went into renal failure. And see, the thing that happened was she said, I want to be like Jean Harlow. Jean Harlow is dead. So the little girl was going to be dead. And she had fallen into renal failure. They got her into the hospital. The parents approached some witch friends that I had. And they came, went into the hospital room, made a circle around her, and separated her from that spirit and saved her life. As soon as they were finished, she was better. She did not die. If they had not interceded, if somebody had not understood what was going on, she would have died, just like Jean Harlow. And so you have to be careful in your language. Now, two, it's not always best to use a board by yourself. because you need the communications, but you don't need to be tired when you're doing it. You don't need to do it by yourself. Now, I'm going to tell you about the story of Pearl Coran and Patience Worth, which is the most famous, as far as I'm concerned, story of a possession that happened because of a Ouija board. But Pearl Coran was a little bored housewife. She didn't have very much of an education. She had never really read a book in her life all the way. She never had any interest in that. When she got married, it was at a time they weren't rich, but she had a lot of free time. And so she could go play, bridge, which was hugely popular. At that time, you'd go to other people's homes and play cards, play games. And the Ouija board was considered like a parlor game. Now, they had, before the Ouija board, you could do a thing where you would take letters and put them in a circle on your table, and you'd have a yes and no like midway through, and then the rest of it was numbers and alphabet. And then you'd take a wine glass and turn it upside down. Well, the Ouija board made it simpler, and it had a little plastic planchette, and you'd sit there with it on your lap or on a table and talk and put your fingers on the planchette and get some kind of experience. Well, she went to a friend's house in 1912 and was impressed with it. So her and this friend got interested in doing it, and they would have sessions where they would sit down and do it. And Pearl really, like I said, she was kind of bored. She was kind of open. And she was talking on the board, using it by herself. And in July 8, 1913, a spirit talked to her named Patience Worth, and the spirit said, many moons ago I lived, and again I come. And later on, the spirit explained she was able to throb to the frequency that to Pearl's frequency, and she just possessed her. But the thing was, Pearl and Patience became very good friends. And Patience was very intelligent. And they asked her, and she said she lived like between 1649 and 1694. She was killed by Indians. Seemed like an Irish kind of girl, English girl, somewhere from Europe. And she loved writing. Well, Pearl had never read a book hardly, but she started using the board, and Patience would talk to her, and Pearl's husband would write down what she said. And she began to write literary works that were really noticed at the time. And she did a book named Telka, Sorry Tale, Hope, True Blood, The Pot Upon the Wheel. She really wrote things there was one book she wrote that was like the time of Christ, and they said it was one of the most accurate books on that subject. And she was getting huge amounts of acclaim until they found out that the books were being written by a spirit who had been dead centuries, and that had possessed her through a Ouija board. And then she was writing these literary giants. So then they scraped her off. But until then, she was doing books that they were some of the finest quality out there. They were like, these are really something. And it came from Patience Worth. And, Pearl was real big into working in it. After her husband died, she wasn't able to carry the load as much as herself, so her work started kind of suffering. But she and patients were friends up until the end. Patients told her, ahead of time that she would die soon, and that she died in 1937. And she died unexpectedly. She got pneumonia and died. Nobody expected for her to die. And but they were friends during the whole time. She never hurt her or anything like that. She actually, Pearl said it was one of the most beautiful things that a human could experience, because she would see these pictures and see the things that patients was telling her. So it's the only possession I've ever known where somebody really welcomed it. But she got it because she was using the board on her own, and the spirit was able to just vibe or throb to her vibration and was able to move right on in. So, I think before you use a Ouija board, you need to do a little bit of meditation. You need to cleanse the board, anoint the board, do some prayer over the board, over the top, over the bottom. Use your energy on it. Make your own energy virus protection, basically. And, but like I said, that was the most famous story I know, which is the patient's worst thing, because she benefited from it. But not all possessions are that way, and not all spirits you talk to are going to be able to possess you from a Ouija board. That is very, 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 very minute. And also there's possession and there's infection. Sometimes you can be infected but not possessed. Possessed is when a spirit wants to drive the car. And infection is where you've got it, but it's kind of in there, but it's also you're still yourself. And in this case, patients didn't rule Pearl, but she would talk to her, and say, would get a little impatient, because Pearl didn't know some of the fancier words or didn't know things, and she would have to explain it and break it down to her. And she would do things. One time they were testing her, and they said, write a poem about this, about the moon, while you're dictating this story you're doing. So she would give a line of a poem, do a line of the story she was doing, do another line of poem, and before it'd be done, or before you know it, it would be done, and she'd have a whole poem. And I've looked at the poems, they were pretty complicated. They're not something I would think of. And they just, people were scratching their heads because Pearl really didn't care about that kind of stuff. So it was very interesting. But the Ouija board continued to be a spiritualist device. And like I said, in my era, it was very popular because of dark shadows and movies. And it was very popular during the wars because there's always a rise in metaphysical stuff during the wars because people go away. And in the old wars, they would get killed. And they maybe have laid in a field, laid in a woods, dumped into a trench without anyone knowing where they were, who they were, the parents not knowing where their baby went. So they would they would go to people with seances, and then when it became available to them, they would use the boards themselves, as a connection to connect to their loved ones that had died, because it was like trying to get a phone call to your dead son and say, "Are you all right?" So every time we've had wars, we've had a rise in them. And when I was young, there were wars going on still. In the 40s, there was the World War II. The First World War Second World War, there was a rise in metaphysical stuff. In the 60s, there was a rise in metaphysical stuff. In the 70s and 80s, it cycled then, and in the 90s, it kind of did a cycle. Right now, it's kind of a cycle. Because now we have something we didn't have, which is 24-hour constant TV. And we get to see people like Tyler Henry and Kim Russo and you know, the Long Island Medium and John Edwards and James Van Prague, and you know, we can look up online stuff that wasn't available when I was young studying metaphysics. There was no internet, and there were videos, but you had to find them and order them, you know, special ones about metaphysical things. So you would have to find these catalogs and find the books and find the videos and find the audio tapes. And now it's a constant barrage. You can go online all around the clock and find things. And you can make your own stuff. There's so many DIY things that, you know, several years ago, the reason I, as a practitioner and as a psychic investigator, had to start using a board. The person I was working with, we were doing films that were pretty intricate. And people kept going, get him to use a board, because I was doing automatic writing, doing that. And I said, all right, you know, I didn't want to use a prepackaged one. So I took an 1800s design, cut the board, had the cord, you know, cleanse the board, cleanse the paper, anointed the paper, charge the ink, charge the board. Then when I applied the artwork, then I took a week. Every day I would take, you know, anytime I could, I would take 30 minutes to just sit there and put energy into this board and made my own virus protection. So then I made this board. That was my Ouija board kind of thing. I used a planchette from the Ouija boards because they came out with this great light, glow-in-the-dark planchette. You push it down and this light comes up. It's beautiful in the dark. So I used one of their planchettes, but I did my board. And I went to a haunted funeral home, and there was a scientist there and some other people. Sim Schrader Hill was taking pictures, and there was a, unbeknownst to me, in this funeral home, which was being used as a Halloween attraction, they had a Ouija board, an antique one, a real antique one, somewhere in the house. And the scientist asked me, where is it? I told them through my board where it was, upstairs in the closet, you know, to the right. So he wasn't happy with that. So he went up and got someone to take it and hide it and said, where is it now? And I explained to them exactly where it was. And he tried to stump me 2 or 3 times, and it kept backfiring. So when we were finished, we went over and looked at the board, and it was an open board. It wasn't mine to close, so I couldn't close it. I have to have permission from the person who owns it to close it. And but this board was from the 30s, and it was open. It was just an open doorway. Someone had used it, left it open. And since Schrader Hill took a picture, and there's this long light cord coming out of it, which is the spirit coming out of the board. And, it was a good example of a not so hot experience, because it was open, but it was not good energy coming through. It was just a portal. And what's a portal? It's we have electromagnetic bands between the dimensional walls that we function in. And it's like a cauterized hole that's in the dimensional wall. And this board was like a cauterized ulcer. And it just was letting whatever flow in. And that means whatever. So whatever was looking and could see, and to a lot of energies, they just It's like they're in the dark and they see your aura or other auras, and it looks like a light on the foggy street, so they just go right towards that light. So it's not a good thing, but it wasn't mine to close. So, but we have pictures of it. It's very interesting, very unique. And it had been used for not so hot purposes. Now, there are people who take them and go to cemeteries, and it's Halloween. People are going to go to cemeteries and want to talk to dead people. And if you're going to do things like that, always ask, is someone there? And if you don't get a response, don't ever say, is something there? There's always something there. So now we're going to have to go to a break, but we'll be right back. So all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope.
That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome to Universal Truths with Mark Foltz, coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. And I'm calling to you from my cute little tiny house near Pensacola. And tonight we're talking Ouija boards and spirit boards. And when we went to break, I was talking about some of the experiences. Now, I don't think children should be exposed to Ouija boards. I think you need to be more adult. I think you need to be of age before you are. The only time in the 70s that there was somebody I knew that was young that wanted to see the experience. And so I made sure we had the experience, took her through it, got the board, did the thing. But there was a girl that I dated in high school. We were just real dear friends. And my nieces and stuff loved her. And everybody, loved this person. But it was before good medicine, and she had manic. She was very manic. And the little girl that the friend that I was taking through this, because she wanted to talk to her. And so the spirit came through, and she said she wanted her to come as one of her children in the future. So she accepted that. and now she is reincarnated, and she's that little girl who is now a grown woman, that she has a child that, the spirit came through, but it didn't come through the board to do it, but through the board she communicated, I'll come through to be with you, because she loves her. And so that's the only young person I've ever allowed or talked to for a board or spiritual stuff, because as I've gotten older, I just think I think you need to wait until you're of age for just so many different reasons. And because everybody has a natural protective system, but as we get older and our chemistry changes and we start to go into puberty, it gets disrupted. So then we have to our energy field has to reset. So during that session, when they're like 10 to 14, 15, 16, they're a little bit more vulnerable. So you don't want to expose children to too much stuff like that. You don't want to expose them to too many haunted places, to too many cemeteries, going in search of, spirits. Because once you start to talk to a spirit, or you want to talk to a spirit, it doesn't need a board. But by doing the board, you're making it where there is a doorway to kind of control the conversation. That way you can say, no, I'm finished. I don't want to talk anymore. Let's close this down. So the board actually is a good buffer. But like I said, before I would use it, I'd be cleansing it, anointing it, making it so that, you don't stick your hand into the tar-like material that can be there, and bring something in or bring something in your home. And I think, people are used to that now, watching these videos and stuff of people. They do all this stuff. They antagonize spirits. They call the spirits. The minute there's a sound, the minute there's a word, the minute there's a movement, they scream and run. And a lot of people have gotten into that. And so the first time they start talking to a board and they get some communication, they'll scream and dump the board or run from the board. And don't do that. You're in control. You just called somebody from the other side. And if you don't close that entryway, they may get sucked this way. They may not just be them coming through. It may draw them through and take them out of where they were. You're disrupting them. They weren't talking to you beforehand. You're the one who got aboard and said, let's talk. So, be aware. And a lot of people, I think, when they talk to spirits too, they have a disrespect for them. They don't understand. They're very emotional. They're very intelligent sometimes, very clear, very crisp, very intelligent. You can make them mad. You can make them hurt. You can make them upset. They're not a plaything. They're a spirit. You wouldn't go up to somebody who has emotional issues and upset them and walk off. Well, maybe some people do. And then leave them in distress, or leave them mad, or leave them longing, or feeling like they've left something that they didn't know that they left. And there's so many spirits that do want to continue living a life that they don't have anymore. And you may be giving them a facility to do that. So if you're going to do these things, be aware. But like I said, don't include children in these things. Children are very psychic, and if they have experiences, they have experiences. But that doesn't mean they need to sit in seances. That doesn't mean they need to go on ghost investigations at cemeteries. Even though, as a child, anytime I went to a cemetery, we had cemeteries around, where we lived. And in the Victorian times, that's where people would go and have picnics. It was in the cemeteries. And my grandparents and family kind of had that kind of thing going. We would go to a place in Pikeville, Tennessee, and there was a cemetery that was attached to the church. So we go to the church, and after church, we go play in the cemetery. And I didn't have to use a Ouija board to have experiences, but because my natural protective system was in, I didn't have any problems. But when you go and start having seances and stuff with children, then they're lowering their protective system, going, are you there? Do you want to talk to me? Want to be with me? And then, sometimes it can lead to problems. So try to tell children, wait until we're a little older, then we'll go do all this stuff. But we'll watch movies or something if you're interested in it, but it's not for you at this age. And then there's some people who have mental and emotional issues, and that, sometimes you can open the door and your house will be full. And, and some people think if a door opens on its own, it's a demon. If it makes a noise, it's a demon. If it's walking around the floor, it's a demon. Demons are very rare. What I consider old school demons, they're very, very rare. What we have a lot of is people. And then there are some things that you do have to watch out for that can infect you. Not necessarily possess you, but give you problems. So, we just have to be a little conscious. And as a psychic who works going and cleansing people's homes, who talks to people's dead people all the time, it's there. You just have to use the right procedures, and you have to use the right training and the right meditations and the right thing to do it, where it's like making a phone call. You can pick up the phone, you talk to them, and when you are finished, you hang up. Now, but I know I've known so many really scary stories of people who don't know what to do when they get these things in their home. And two, when you do your cleansing in your home, try not to treat it don't pick a certain religion to use to try and get it out of your house. It's an energy. And the things I'll tell you to do, you treat it as an energy, you treat your energy field as an energy, you change the locks, you do it, and you make it where the spirit has to leave. But if you start going, in a Catholic thing or a Baptist thing or a Jewish thing, talking to a spirit who doesn't relate to what you're talking about, you can cause trouble. You can get them really mad, and that nothing makes one madder than to be called a demon when they're not a demon. And that I have seen some that have gone, you think I'm a demon? I'm gonna show you. Or, you get things in your home, and the children see these things because sometimes they can. Animals and children can see these things. And I've been on quite a few. I remember one that I went to that this dead biker was in this child's room, and it would come out of the closet to scare her. And nobody knew, but I turned to the woman, the mother, and I said, "You used to date bikers?" And she went, "Yes." And this was a dead biker who moved in, and it was in there, and it, for some reason, it wasn't threatened by the child. He wasn't getting any response from the mother, so the child could see him, so he was bothering the child. And I got him out, unrooted, and out. So, your children being terrified, that's one thing for me. It's like I've done many of, don't ask what cost is. There's a child involved, let's get this done. It's one thing if you've done something and you got a dead boyfriend in your house. The other thing is we don't want children being terrorized, because as a child, I would see things sometimes. My parents didn't want to know anything about whatever I'd see, because I would freak them out. So I couldn't tell anybody. And I would see things that would absolutely, honestly scare the hell out of me, and not have any protection, not any support, belief. My parents, and if something scared me, if a house fell on me, they would have been happy with that. So, because they just were strange people. Most parents, care about their child, and if your child is scared, you need to make sure that that's something that's not an element. Because it is scary when you see somebody show up and they're dead looking, or you see a partial body going through, or people standing by your bed, or one of the things that I don't know what had happened on the property our house was built on, but I remember watching, there was always a lot, there had been trees and stuff. It had been a farm at one time. And the shadow in my window, in one room when I lived in one side of the house, you could see the shadow of a dead man hanging and swinging back and forth. Now, when I moved to another room, I never saw it again. But in that room, anytime I was in there, I'd be trying to go to sleep. I'd turn over, face the wall, and you'd see the shadow. There it was, just swinging back and forth, quietly, silently. And they just, I couldn't tell anybody. So I just had to suffer and be afraid. It never hurt me, but I could see it. So, we don't want children to experience that. And we don't want people bringing home dead people from cemeteries and funeral homes and hospitals, and having children having to deal with that kind of stuff, because that can be very, very traumatic. So, and you don't want to bring them in through the devices you use. So now we are going to have to go to break. So all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. The January 6th committee voted unanimously today to subpoena former President Donald Trump for testimony and documents related to the deadly attack on the U.S. Capitol a year ago. Committee Vice Chair Liz Cheney.
We must seek the testimony under oath of January 6th central player.
Committee Chairman Benny Thompson says the move is an extraordinary one, but
he is the one person at the center of the story of what happened on January 6th. So we want to hear from him.
At today's hearing, the committee showed new evidence and heard new testimony from members of the Trump administration, and also displayed new evidence that showed the Secret Service received a tip in advance warning of potential violence that day. President Trump responded by calling the committee a bust and asking why they waited till their last meeting to subpoena him. It's not clear if Trump will comply once the subpoena is issued, which could come in a couple of days. The U.S. Supreme Court today tossed out Trump's request to intervene in a legal fight over the handling of classified documents seized in an FBI raid on his Mar-a-Lago home in Florida. NPR's Nina Totenberg has more.
The High Court's one-sentence order came less than 2 weeks after Trump asked the justices to intervene. There was no noted dissent. Trump was essentially asking the justices to undo 2 actions taken by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals based in Atlanta. That court has twice blocked legal actions taken at Trump's behest by Judge Eileen Cannon, a Trump-appointed judge who named a special master to examine the seized documents and blocked the Justice Department from using the classified material in its ongoing criminal inquiry. Now, the Justice Department can go ahead. Nina Totenberg, NPR News, Washington.
On Wall Street, it was a dramatic reversal and then some. The Dow plunged 500 points on new inflation data, then surged higher, closing more than 800 points up for the day. NPR's David Gura has more.
Wall Street's initial reaction to the latest government report on consumer prices was negative. Stocks tumbled out of the gate after the Consumer Price Index for September showed prices rose by 8.2% from a year earlier. And month-to-month, so-called core CPI, which doesn't include food or fuel, was up by 0.6%. Disappointing news for the Federal Reserve, which is trying to get high inflation under control. But markets reversed course quickly, and all three major indexes ended the day more than 2% higher, ahead of a busy day for earnings. On Friday, most of the major banks are scheduled to report how they did in the last quarter. David Gura, NPR News, New York.
And by the close, the Dow was up 827 points. The Nasdaq was up 232, S&P 500 up 92. You're listening to NPR News. The gunman convicted of shooting and killing 17 people at a high school in Parkland, Florida in 2018 has been sentenced to life in prison without parole. The jury said it couldn't unanimously agree that Nicholas Cruz should be executed. This ends a 3-month sentencing trial that included graphic videos and emotional testimony from victims' family members. A judge will formally sentence Cruz on November 1st. Sony has expanded from electronics into games, music, and film, and now the Japanese company is making a play in the auto industry. As NPR's Camila Domonoski reports, Sony and Honda are partnering on an electric vehicle that they will build in the United States.
At a press conference, executives from Sony and Honda emphasized the benefits of this partnership between two Japanese business giants with different expertise. Their first product, an electric vehicle, will be built in North America, with U.S. deliveries starting in 2026. It will also be exported to Europe and Japan. That's unusual. American-made vehicles are rarely sold in Japan. Sony has been eyeing the auto biz for a couple of years now, and Honda is trying to catch up with rival automakers in the race to make electric vehicles. It's also partnering with GM on some battery-powered vehicles. Camila Domonoski, NPR News.
Mortgage rates have hit a 20-year high of nearly 7%. Mortgage buyer Freddie Mac says the average 30-year loan rose to 6.92% last week. Last year, the rate was just over 3%. This is NPR News.
There's no shortage of questions in this life. That's where the Life Kit podcast comes in.
Why can't I stop buying stuff?
Oh, what if they don't like me? Or what if I'm not charming enough?
Are you going to understand what I'm going through?
I'm Marielle Segarra, the new host of Life Kit, a podcast that guides you through all the big and small questions with the help of experts. Listen now to the Life Kit podcast from NPR.
Welcome back to Universal Truths with Mark Fultz, coming to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Birmingham, Alabama, and coming to you from my cute little tiny house. And we are talking to you tonight about Ouija boards and spirit boards. And I spent the first hour talking about Ouija. Now, I have to also tell a story. A friend of mine that I have 20 years, she had a cat that she named Ouija. And she had to bring because one of the guys on the farm used to take a cattle prod and shock her with it because she was a little mean. She was a little feral. But they shocked her in the head and she got brain damage. And that cat, she would go after people. She would chase horses. She would chase goats. And her name was Ouija. And she was a little tuxedo cat. I liked her. I thought she was so mean, but I liked her. And we one time had to take her to the vet. And she hated any other people, you know. So we took her to vets. We got thrown out of 3 vets. And one time they called, and you could hear the vet screaming, "Miss Anderson, come get this cat." And then you'd hear this thing. It sounded like something from the pit of hell going. Arr! So we went to there, and Judith, who owned it, went back to get the cat. this cat, it would corner you. It would get up and walk on its back legs. It didn't have any claws, but it didn't need them. But one time it got mad at me for throwing paper at her when we were playing it, doing something. We got tired when we were throwing paper. That cat cornered me and bit the stew out of me, but it walked like a bear. And I was laughing so hard I couldn't get away from it. And so I always remember Ouija. She's been gone, 18 years, but let me tell you what, she is not forgotten. But she hated everybody. And but she was funny. But I'm going to start telling you now about a different kind of spirit board. Now, of course, like I said before, I was working with a guy who goes, you need to have a board. You need to do this. So I made my own board. And my board is still very good. I'm sitting here looking at it right now. It's beautiful. Late 1800s design, beautiful. But I have a close friend named Teal Gray. Hi, Teal. And she likes to go to Europe. And she likes a place in York, England. There's a 650-year-old apartment they like to rent. And this was several years ago. This has been about 5 or 6 years ago, I guess. And the last time she was there at this apartment, she had taken her children and her husband and they were all having experiences. It's like a 3-story apartment. And people were having their hair brushed by a ghost. Some invisible person kept tucking some of them in. You could hear boots walking around the beds, up and down the stairs, just all sorts of stuff. And so they were having experiences, but they weren't terrifying experiences, but they are scary. If you don't think that experiencing ghosts like that isn't scary, it's scary to a lot of people, and it can unnerve you. To me, it's exciting. But to other people, I can see where it's scary because, I lived in a place where there were a shadow person walked in and lived in there. And, if you weren't careful, you'd be dragging through, being tired, going to the hallway to get something. And you'd walk face to face with this shadow person in the dark in the middle of the country. And it was, the initial thing it was a good jump scare. So I don't care how professional you are, there are some things that will make you jump. And one day, all of her children, everybody was gone. She just wanted to spend time in this apartment. And it started. She could hear the walking and the boots and the things and hear somebody talking. And she thought they wanted to talk to her. So she said, all right, I know you want to talk. Well, there was a old, one of those old wind-up, I think it's old telephones that was on the wall, an antique phone. It wasn't hooked up. It started ringing. And it took her by surprise, so she grabbed her shoes and ran out. Then later came back and was like, okay, maybe I'm not ready for that. Because when it's that direct that they're calling you, it can unnerve you. It doesn't mean that, you're not professional or anything with it. I've had the stew scared of me several times. So, but in my case, I'm all for it, But if you're not ready for it, it can be rather unnerving. And so she was unnerved. But she came back, and then, they kept having experiences. So when she came home and was telling me, because I'm very adept at remote viewing and stuff, these spirits started talking to me. And they identified themselves, and then they were going, we want a better way to talk. So they started talking to me. And I'm an artist. I'm a seancist. You know, I talk to dead people. So it became very interesting. They were fascinating spirits. And so they were telling me what they wanted. So I started getting the images, what they wanted, and I started putting together the boards. And it got to where, you know, now if I started trying taking a break or anything, they would go, no, got to do it. And so for about a week, I'd call her and say, thanks, you know, thanks, you know, but I was having fun doing the boards. And I finally finished like 5 boards. And they are round. All of my other boards are rectangles, and I don't know why they were round. But I do love circular art. And after I'd gotten these boards well on their way, she was showing me some pictures from the apartment. And there was this picture of this round spirit board. And I thought, well, maybe she took a picture of that in a store or something. I said, where's that from? And she says, oh, it's so haunted that the owners put round spirit boards next to your bed so you can talk to the spirits. And I went, well, no wonder they like circular boards. That's what they've been talking through. And so they wanted, when they were talking to me, they were like, talking to a regular board is like talking to a horse. It's like clomp, clomp, clomp. You know, A, B, Z. And they're like, we don't want that. We want communication. So I put these boards are full words, expressions. So you get a complete sentence when you're doing these boards. And the major board is one that I love, 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 love. I call it Deja. And she is based on a piece of gypsy jewelry where there's all of these seasons and stuff around the board and things, and it's beautiful. And the boards that go with it are the categories of death. So if I'm in an investigation and I've got these boards out, I've got 5 big boards, and I can use it like a DJ. I use the main board, then I jump to the ones that are, you know, looking for the different types of death, the chemicals, the type of death, because there's 4 categories of death: natural, unnatural, homicide, suicide. And so, you know, if somebody is investigating, they want to come to me, I can look up information about that death, maybe chemical, maybe something they're looking for, or they've missed. Mileage, direction where you're looking for someone. So I have a name board thing that people will not believe, because 75 little boards, that 3,500 female names. Each board has 100 names. Say, like, if I hear a male name that begins with H. So I reach down, grab the H board. It will have the 100 most popular H names on it, because I get a little limited on names. So this helps me look for more information. And so it's really going to be something people will freak out when they see it. But that's my spirit boards. But when I create them, and everyone who sees them wants them, and so I don't know how I'm going to handle that. But they are they have the colors of the neurons in the brain when it's working doing this stuff. And one of them that's about death, I have it's like a cross section of the cemetery. There's like 4 or 6 depictions of a grave, and the first grave is the fresh person that's been buried, and then it has the decomposition until their skeleton, and in between it has all the things of the cemetery in it. But I go into the grave, basically looking for the information. People, when they see this, they're going to just lose their minds. People in person lose their minds when I bring them around. So I don't have them out yet where people can see them, but let me tell you what. when I do it, it'll be like a DJ. I'll be going, all right, you're looking for this, jump from board to board, looking for things we're looking for, and even going to make one for, car types, because I'm terrible with cars. Well, if somebody, the type, the make, I can make a board to cover anything I need to do. So my spirit board, so I charge the ink, I charge the paper, charge the board, then I sit with the board, as much as possible. The first week I use 30-minute spots at a time to put a hand on each side and charge it. And I open the centers with, I have things like Anubis and things like as the Eye of Horus as the center, so that you can, I have to open up. I use each board. When I start them up to use them, I open up the third eye in each of them and have it connected to my third eye. So each board is connected by a fiber optic tether of PSI energy going from my third eye to the third eye of the board, going through Horus and Anubis, and going to the worlds of the dead, basically. So they're very complicated looking, but when they go, when I use my planchette on it and I use these boards, it's like butter. It is like you ask a question and it sounds like someone ice skating. It's fabulous, and they're beautiful and colorful. They have the colors of the neurons and the colors of the chakras, and they're so different and so unique and so out there that there's nothing to compare them to, because they're not like a regular Ouija board. And they're very powerful tools, and they're very accurate tools. So when I begin my shows this upcoming year and start using them, I think people will need to wear diapers. You need to you need to make sure you have diapers, because it's going to make you lose control. They're going to be fantastic. But this all came from Teal going to a haunted place. The spirits wanted to talk to her so much that they reached out to me, and it is spirit-created communication devices created for the spirit communication in a way that they were not getting otherwise. So that was totally interesting and unique for me, and I enjoyed every second of it. But I tell you what, if I thought I was going to take a few days off and not do it, they would just be like, poke, poke, poke. Get up, get in there, do that. We want this done. And they've got it done. And I'm very grateful they pushed me to it. But I'll tell you what, at 3 or 4 in the morning, sometimes I'd be like, now, listen, you. But now, and I'm also creating my own planchette. There's a thing called metal clay. And you take it, and it has silver or gold in the clay, and you mold it, and then you burn it off. And when you burn off the clay, you have silver. So I can sculpt individual planchettes out of silver with gold elements or gold. I can actually have a gold metal planchette with semi-precious and precious stones, because I get emeralds and rubies and things like that. I'll just have them covered in semi-precious stones, and it'll be something nobody's seen before. And they're just beautiful, beautiful. But I may make them like a combination of metal and wood and things like that to represent all of the elements, all of the everything. Because wood, because it was alive and it has a frequency, it takes frequencies. And, but you can also do, I think they have copper and bronze, and copper is so good for metaphysical stuff. So when y'all get to see these things, you're not going to know what to think. And as a matter of fact, I don't know what to think. I think they're once I start doing these Art Nouveau planchettes out of gold, silver, and copper and bronze, I'm going to lose my mind. And like I said, and people who've seen my boards, they all want to touch them. They all are drawn to them. They're non-threatening. But I treat them like a little car. They purr. The information, the engine is there. But when I'm finished, I shut it down. I have no problem. And they are just wonderful, wonderful. And I think they're going to be a treat to the world. Then if I can make them where I can make them for people, I'll start doing that. But, and it's for practitioners. It's not for just, I'm kind of bored, I want to just use this. It's for people. Every metaphysical, heavy-duty metaphysical friend I have, they've just gone, oh, I need that. It's talking to me. It's talking to me. And so I don't know what this is going to turn out to be because it's so interesting. But like I said, boards created, guided by spirits to say, we want this, we want this, we don't want that. We want to be able to communicate like we're talking in a in a conversation. We don't want you to have to stomp out the letters or stomp out the numbers or, for it to be garbled. These are not garbled. These are definitely not garbled conversations. I've used them in seances before, and they just, and I close my eyes. I use the light up planchettes, and I let them go, and you'd be surprised what it lands on. Now, the Ouija boards use yes, no, hello, goodbye. So on this one, they wanted to do it differently. So some of it is in French, and we, nay. I made fun of stuff sometimes. So I was going oi. And now I have to watch it because I'll go, oi. We'll go to the we. And, which could be very funny, but it's, I don't mean to do it. But I'm not used to saying we, I'm a little country boy. Oi. Hey, oi. And, but there are elements in it that, just so unique. The main board I've done it in purples and blues and, things like that, but there's a witch flying on a broom, there's, the cat chasing the rabbit, the, elements that show like the summer, the harvest, So it's a circular diorama of the season with birds and things like that. The birds are flying, the animals are running, the elements of the summer and the growing and the harvest. It blows my mind when I look at some of them. Because they're just so darn interesting and complex. And things that, too, as a channeler, as a medium, sometimes when you do these things and you channel and you bring these interesting, complex, beautiful articles into life, you're the conduit. So, and then you look at it later and you go, oh, wow, I did that. That's like I'm doing an album. And I just came up with a song the other day. We have in the store, I built a wicker man for work, harvest, and effort for a store. So I created a song for it where I went to my friends, we put music to it, and it is, when I look at it and listen to it, it's like, wow. It's like it comes out of, it's like it's alien. It just comes from somewhere else. And it's fascinating and riveting and feeds the soul. And I like to do a lot of things that feed the soul. not just my soul, other people's soul. And so the devices I have, you get very personal. You want to protect them. You want them to be used correctly. You want to use them correctly. You want to, it's like being given a plate of emeralds, that you have to protect. You have to love them and protect them. You can let other people see them, but you want to protect them. And so it brings a lot of things to me that I just wouldn't have. And I think, well, I'm just a little redneck, little witchy boy from back in the woods in Tennessee, a little Appalachian. And here I am making high-tech communication devices that are not high-tech as far as what some people would think, but they are high-tech for me because they get the point across. And eventually I really want to use them in missing persons. I love to work on missing persons stuff. I've had, I had an experience when there was a mother approached me, and her daughter had been missing for 3 months. And I looked at it, said, daughter's not dead. They thought she was dead laying in a ditch somewhere. And I said, no, she's not dead. She's just hiding right now, out of sight. And I reached into the girl's energy field, told her to call her mother, and I said, she'll call you in about 2 weeks. Well, 3 or 4 days later, she called her mother out of the blue. They had lunch. Now every month they're back on track. But they thought she was dead. They thought she was gone. See if I could talk to her spirit. So I can do that without a board. But then when you have the device, you have the phone to really, in a calculated way, talk to spirits, talk to people's energies, to look because everything is out there. If it's been alive, it has a trail. And we as channelers and mediums have to find a way to get that trail. And once you're on that trail, that fiber optic, and you can track it, you can talk to that person. And that's the thing with murders and things like that, and people who are missing. Those people, there's a trail somewhere to their energy. If you can connect to the right thing, maybe you can find out where they are. Maybe you can get the details. But I can talk to living people through their energy fields. And so it has expanded how I deal with doing my boards, doing my talent, doing the things that have been given to me, because I feel like these are talents given to me. It's not like a rhinestone cowboy, like, woohoo, look what I can do. I like to help people. I like being metaphysical. I like that what I'm doing can benefit someone, can help someone. You never know. People come in and they'll be laughing. And all of a sudden you're sitting there talking to their dead person and letting them know what's real. It's so unique. And I look at it as like I'm very privileged to have this. And, in my days, I've had people who've come in that didn't have a dime, that couldn't afford to do whatever they need, but they needed me. And I've given to those cases. I've given to people who need to know what's going on with their child that died. They need to know what happened. Are they going to catch the person who killed their loved one? is their loved one dead, or are they just in the woods somewhere dead, or are they having issues? Are they somewhere else? Are they being kept? Are they in a cult? You never know what you're going to get. Every day is different. With us, with the mediums, we have kind of like a construct, and you come to me in that construct, and I can use that construct to look at what you've got going. And I will use any tool at my fingertips to do that, which includes that I make my own tools. I have a friend that's just a brainiac. I'm hoping to get him to help. We're going to make some new old school stuff. When I was young, before I started doing boards and all that stuff, in the 70s and stuff, when I was really in the metaphysics, but I would go to cemeteries and haunt cemeteries. I wanted to see the ghosts. I wanted to see spirits. I really had a drive for that. And we would take little recorders, little tape recorders, and put them down on the grave, set it off, walk off, come back, and sometimes you would get a lot of conversation on these cassettes. And I got more on cassette than I do on digital. Now, I do have some digital. There is my friend Jerry Harvey. When I was in Chattanooga, he would get I had a little digital recorder. First time I'd ever really used one of my own. And there was a part of the old hospital. It was before it got torn down. So we went to the morgue, which was still there. It had been closed for like 20 years. So we're at this morgue. We had to go way up these steps, and we're in the morgue, and it is dark on the way up to there. The morgue was at the top, and it was daylight, and it was bright. But the stairwell to go down was dark. And I was standing, we had finished with the morgue. We were getting ready to go back down. And I could hear this spirit saying its name was Douglas Charles. And I was talking about it. All of a sudden, out from the bottom of the stairwell, we hear this without the cough, and I got it on tape. But the problem was we had Jerry, myself, and we had two girls with us, and all of them were scared to death to go down that stairwell. And before we'd come up there was a little place with keys and things, and they had all been picking up keys because it was going to be torn down. And these keys have been hanging up there 40, 50 years, And we went down that stairwell, which was pitch black. We got out of the doors, and everybody started running. And the girls, I could hear this clink, 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 and they were throwing the keys that they got. And they go, "Please don't follow me. I'm sorry, please. I didn't mean to piss you off. I didn't mean to make you mad. Here, have your keys. Leave me alone. Don't follow me home." And so anytime I can get communication and spirit interaction and catch it, I love to do it. So the better, if we can have tools to do so. And so I'm wanting to make beyond these. I want to make other devices that are kind of old school. I love it. I love the new technology, but I love simple, sit down at the table and do it. Because I'm a trained metaphysical individual. But my favorite thing to do is to be a kitchen witch. I just take my shoes off. I go in the kitchen. I do my things. If I need to make candles or put things together or make oils or do something to do a specific, tool or sit down and sculpt something, sit down and draw something. And I love that. I love something that could have been made 200 years ago or 100 years ago or 50 years ago that I can sit down and do. I love it. I love to be comfortable and do it, even though how to do things in a very high frequency energy way. And I think if you're going to be serious about it, then you figure it out. If you're going to be just interested in it, just be interested in it. You don't have to get fancy. But in my case, I have to, because people come to me all the time. And people come to me all the time about spirits that they've gotten from various experiences, or, in their houses, in their cars, or going to the cemetery, or going to the funeral home. And the thing about funeral homes, they spirits can be in them, but every funeral home I've been in, they stay out of the embalming room. It's too real for them. Now, the rooms next to it, the viewing rooms, I've seen some that are haunted. Busy. You can hear people walking. You can hear people scuffing across the carpets. You can hear people talking. But the minute you go into the embalming room, it's like sacred land. They just don't go in there. And that's an interesting thing, because in the funeral, the morticians I've known and everything, they'll try not to be anything. They don't want to think anything. They don't want to get themselves scared thinking about ghosts and spirits and stuff. So they just go in and do their work, and proceed with it. But I've had several morticians drag me into their funeral home going, okay, now you go look at this, because I don't know what to think about this. And, one place I went, it was great. I thought my other friend who was with me was going to try and jump out and scare me, because I heard someone walking. I jumped around the corner. She was nowhere in sight. It was a ghost. So we have to go to a break, but when we come back, I want to tell you how to cleanse your home and how to take care of some of these things you might get through Ouija boards and going to the cemeteries and the funeral homes. So all of you out there in the dark, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
To Universal Truths, this is Mark Fultz coming back to you from WBHM-DB in beautiful Alabama, talking to you from my sweet, cute little tiny house near Pensacola. My cute little haunted house in Pensacola. Now, if you do have a problem, if you have used a Ouija board, or you have gone to a cemetery, or you have gone to a hospital, or gone to a funeral home, and you've brought back a little dead person with you, or someone who's been in that house forever and a day, you may have. If you have something going on in your house and you need a little help, you need to change the energy. Now, this is what I came up with over the years, what I use. From the ocean, there is a specific fluid that's called Florida water, and I usually get about 2 bottles of that, and I get me a good sage stick. Now you go open up all the doors and all the closets and all the cabinets, anything that. And we start with the water, with the Florida water. Or if you don't have Florida water, you can take a bowl of water, put 3 pinches of salt in it, look up at the top of your head in your mind's eye and go 1, 2, 3, turn the white light on top of your head, go 1, 2, 3, let that light go down in your arm into your index finger, use that light through your finger, put it into the water. That will charge up the water. Now, if it's your home, it's your energy, it's better if you can do it yourself. Now, if you need someone to come in and brood it out, make sure they can do it. There's some metaphysical people who do know how, and then there's some that they sometimes can make it worse if they come in and they're antagonizing. You're not trying. It's what you're going to do. Don't look at it as a religious thing. Look at it as an energy, because that's what it. So you're going to draw a new boundary. And we're going to use the salt water or the Florida water. You have it in a bowl. The front door. And in a clockwise manner, you go through the house, sprinkling that water as you go. Sprinkle it everywhere, dark and all that. Going, spirits of ill will, ill intent, cannot, will not cross this line. And you say it over and over. And you do that 3 times. You go once, go around clockwise manner to the front door, twice, then 3 times. As you're lighting the sage, you're doing the things, do a little prayer. Because what's happened, you've drawn a boundary. Now what we want to do is we want to push the energy and the spirits out of that boundary, outside of the house. That's what you're going to do with the smudge. You're going to smudge it, and it'll smoke them up a little bit, and they'll move out, and they'll come back when the sage is gone. So if you haven't drawn the boundary, they'll come back after the sage is gone. Enter. Spirits of ill will, ill intent, cannot, will not cross this line. Do it 3 times through the house. And then finish with a prayer at the front door. Really smudge the windows and doors and any openings. Smudge the bathrooms, because, so if it's a lower there are lower energy spirits sometimes. They feed off of urine, feces, dirt. That's why, before you start doing this stuff, if you can, clean your house. Clean your house. Don't give them anything don't give them any rotting food, any rotting energy, any dirty bathrooms or anything, to feed off of. That's basic energies, basic spirits. There are a lot of spirits that are just in your house, and things like that. They feed off of thermal heat, and but there are some lower vibrational ones that are, if they're really scary kind of stuff, they'll find a way to eat minerals from anything. So that means rotting food, feces, da-da-da-da-da-da. So clean, get into, if your house is cluttered, clean, the cluttered house, cluttered mind. You need to take control of your house, your property. And if you have children in it and they're seeing dead people or they're being harassed by spirits, you got to stop it immediately. And that's the way to stop it. You go through, you cleanse it, you change it. Talk about the spirits or anything or the activity for a few days. Let it kind of disengage, because you may get like residue stuff happening, but let that fall off. Don't talk about it for a few days. Let it kind of go away. Let it disengage. Because the spirits, if they're trying to get back in and they can't get through that, if they're a lower frequency and you've just done a high frequency boundary, they will not be able to cross that line because it's too high vibrational. And the smells push them out, but that line will keep them out. And if you have places like tile floors and things like that, you can take a little bit of wash your floor, vinegar and water. They don't like that smell. If you put vinegar, water, and stuff, and spritz, or the Florida water spritz your carpets and maybe your furniture. Do a little test to make sure there's nothing. Just do it, lightly, but or even just the salt water. But you have to use all of the elements. You have to use the earth, fire, and water. And the salt water, of course, you have the salt and the water. That's kind of like earth and water. The sage, you got the fire, the smoke, and the earthiness of the sage. So you have all of it, but you have to use all elements. And also, after you've done it, if you have any activity, tell the spirit, say, no, this is my house, go. If you have something bothering your children, teach your children to not be afraid. Say no, say go. Easier to said than done. See what some of these things look like. But I've gotten to where, if I see something I don't like, I'll just go, no, go, because I have to keep mine up because, of course, I'm around all this stuff all the time. And we have a haunted house. I mean, what's here that's not harmful that's here, it's just here. And we also have a very cute ghost cat. And I'll know when it's wandering because it comes out from underneath the sink in the kitchen. And it's very fluffy, brownish, tabby-ish looking thing. And for last year, all I saw was the tail, and it would be zipping around, and it would go back under the sink. And it apparently, I guess, a cat that died under the house or something years ago, or that's where it lived. And so, I don't want to disturb it. It's actually, the other night I heard it, yesterday I heard it in my bedroom. We have cats, but we keep, I have them in different parts of the house. And I heard this little meow and meow, and I got up to let it out. I thought, well, it's one of our cats, and it was the ghost cat. And you see it, its tail's so fluffy, and it's funny. But and then I have a haunted mirror where the ghost in the haunted mirror turns my vases, and they'll turn them all sorts of different directions. That they'll be in different directions. The one in the center will be fine, and then the ones around it will turn all sorts of places, or turn in the right one direction, or all. It's just letting me know it's there. And it's a woman. Sometimes I can see her hair poke up in the mirror. The mirror is very old, but she's harmless, and so I would never disturb them. Now we've had a few years ago we had somebody who was getting ready to die, so this spirit was coming to my house, and my roommate was going, you've been gone, but someone's been knocking on. You're not here. And so the night I was back after being gone a week, I was sitting in the front room, and I felt it move through the front room. I heard it go to the door and start knocking, and it was a countdown. So I told him, okay, but it was a strange thing, and I told him, I said, I get it, I understand it. Please don't do that anymore. And it quit, but I knew to watch out for what would happen, and then eventually we found out. And it wasn't anything bad. It's just, it was someone who was getting ready to die, and these spirits were letting me know. So now we are going to finish our show for tonight on the Ouija boards and spirit boards. I hope there was enough information in there to entertain you. And I've had fun. I love to talk about all this stuff. And I always want to tell y'all, thank you very much for anyone who listens to me. But, of course, this is my season. I love October, love Halloween. And I love to, on Halloween night, I open the door, and we don't have trick-or-treaters. I haven't had a trick-or-treater in years. But I put on a pot of homemade chili, homemade vegetable soups, and things. We make treats, and we give honor to all those people who've come and gone, and we sit and visit, and I just love it. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing for me for some reason. And we just, it's a very, enjoy this spooky part of the year, because it is the spooky part, and watch the scary movies. If you're going to use a Ouija board, or you're going to use and stuff like that, remember what I'm telling you. Be careful. Always say hello, goodbye. And if you say if somebody's out there, say if somebody's there, say somebody. Do not ever go, is there something out there? Because there's always something out there wanting to talk to you, wanting to get in your house, wanting to take up your time. So now, always use precaution. Go do your ghost hunts. Go do your ghost tours. Go to your cemeteries. But always do a little prayer before you go. Always kind of white light yourself. Always turn it down when you're finished. Do things. You can do things and see things like an observer without putting yourself in danger or putting your children in danger or even just scaring yourself to death. Because it's scary. Some of the things, even professionals won't admit it, but let me tell you what, there's plenty of stuff that'll make you jump. So don't worry if it makes you scared. Just get over the being scared. Tell them, get out. If you need to cleanse. If you want to use devices, use them wisely. Now, I'm going to once again tell everybody, if you want to see me in person, I work at Live and Let Live Metaphysical Store, 4622 Softly Field Road in Pensacola. You can usually catch me there Fridays and Saturdays. If you're coming into town and you want to see me, but I'm not in there, call me 24 hours before you get here. Call them, call Sal or Matthew, and they'll call me and let me know that, and tell them I'm out of town, I'm coming in, I would like to see them. And I'll see what I can do to help you. Well, I have enjoyed our time together, and next week I may do ghost stories or something. I'll come up with something spooky for the season. I'll tell you some of my favorite ones, like Bumpity Bump and things like that. Children's stories all the way up to the scary stuff. So all of you out there in the dark, you can now touch that dial. But I will be back next Thursday and with something else to scare you with. So, see you then. Good night.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.